Or like you might be able to have your your face kind of down in the bottom, and the rest of the time you can see that. Like there's a lot
Like
of.
I know that they do video editing.
I would want my face to be the big part and the little stuff in the bottom. But,
Oh, there, I can see it now.
Thanks for Tom Simon.
huh? That's it, that's it.
But it's backwards.
So that's big. So then don't worry about getting the board, just
Okay.
worry about getting me. Okay, so legal descriptions. So a street address, well, usually enough to find a building. So did anybody use GPS to find this location here? Yes? Seneca did. Okay. So a street address, while usually enough to find a building, is not enough to describe legal ownership. It's not enough. Describing land for documents such as deeds, mortgages, it must be legally sufficient. And it must be able to be accepted in a court of law, and it must be based on a survey. So there's a difference between a legal description and a property address. There's 3 different ways. Well, a legal description of a parcel of property defines the exact location of that parcel. A description is legally sufficient if a competent surveyor can locate the parcel using that description. Location means a surveyor can define the exact boundaries of that property. Okay? So, the GPS will take you to the address, right? Andrea, this one's not working. I don't know if we have another one or not. It'll take you to the address, but the address doesn't tell you how big the property is, does it? The address doesn't tell you how much frontage is in the front or how deep it is in the back. That's where a legal description is different. And I see a lot of real estate agents make a mistake on sales agreements. They'll just put the address. Well, the address is not enough to describe the property. You need a legal description. And ownership of a piece of property may transfer many, many times. It can transfer 100 times. But that legal description has to stay the same every time. It never changes. It never changes. So we're going to get into here the different types or methods of describing.
That was brand new.
Can you put it on your list and bring one up Tuesday? Methods of describing real estate. There's 3 different ways. I would know these. Meets and bounds, rectangular government survey system, and lots and block. Okay? In Pennsylvania, we use 2 types. We use the meets and bounds, which is the oldest form used, and lot and block. So with a meets and bounds survey, there's a starting point and an end point. So you start at a point of beginning. Okay? There she is. There's her name tag right there, squirrel.
What?
I've been holding it for you. It's been keeping this thing warm for you.
Oh, I threw that away.
I found it in the garbage. I pulled it out.
Oh, thanks.
Only my daughter would throw her name tag away. Huh? So
You have to give another one.
you came just in time. We're just starting number 4.
Put it out of them.
So meets and bounds starts at a point of beginning and then proceeds clockwise around. Clockwise. Okay? And measures, meets means distance. Bounds means direction. Okay? means direction. Monuments are also used with this meets and bounds form of survey. And monuments could have been a big tree, a big oak tree. It could have been a stake in the ground. This would be considered a monument. That tree could be a monument. The big rock could be a monument. Because you got to remember, Lewis and Clark surveyed most of Pennsylvania. Okay, so I don't know when they did it. Can you Google it? What year? But back then they didn't have electronic equipment. They didn't have cell phones. They went out with a kind of compass thing that they used to look through, like a scope and a compass.
1803.
In 1803. So what did they have in 1803? No, they didn't even have cars, did they? I don't think so. So, and then they usually had chains. They had a chain, and that chain measured so many feet. And we'll get into it. I'm not sure how many feet a chain is. And what they would do is they'd get this stake and hold it, and then they'd have this chain, and they would have the compass, and they would say, okay, we're going to go north. Pull the chain tight, Lewis. One chain, two chains, and they would do it until they surveyed along north. So let's say they were surveying this right here. Here's Lewis holding a chain, one chain, two chains, three to four chains, north. Okay, and that's what the legal description would be. 4 chains north, starting at the pin or stake or rock. And then they would say, okay, now we're going to go east. 1 chain, 2 chains, 3 chains to a point. Then we're going to go south to a point, and then we're going to go back to the point of beginning, so many chains or so many feet. So that's how they originally surveyed most of Pennsylvania. You know, they got a compass, and they got one of them little scopes. Does anybody know what those scopes are called? A surveyor looks through? Transit. And then sometimes they would go and they would say, hey, here's a big oak tree. We'll just go to the big oak tree. Sometimes they would go to a stream and say to the edge of the stream. So that's how Pennsylvania was originally laid out, with meets and bounds, and they used a lot of monuments because it was easier to the big rock. What happens with big oak trees and streams and rocks? They get moved over the years. That was the problem with that, but some of the deeds still say that in it. So I got to see where I'm at with this. So the meets and bounds system of legal descriptions use specific locations, distance, and compass directions to describe the boundaries of a piece of property. Okay, the description starts at a designated place called the point of beginning. You need to know that. And for that to be a correct survey, it always has to end up at the point of beginning. So if they started here, if the legal description starts here, but ends here, it's not a legal legal description, because it didn't what they call close. You got to start at the point of beginning, you got to end at the point of beginning. Okay? It proceeds around boundaries by referring to linear measurements. Meets equals that distance, bounds equals direction. That's why they call it a meets and bounds legal description. The description must completely close. The term monument describes points in the survey. Their boundaries that were noted on the survey. Monuments usually are turning points. and they can be man-made or natural. So let me see if I can get this legal descriptions video to work for us here.
If you live in the Pittsburgh area and you're tired of dieting
and fences. The measurement from the point of beginning to monument 1 is 100.
There they are, Lewis and Clark.
In this review of legal descriptions, we will demonstrate how a surveyor will move around a lot, identify the 3 types of legal descriptions, demonstrate how to convert square footage to acres, and define the words check, township, section, benchmark, datum, and spot survey. We will also introduce basic area math calculations by working questions for you. Just relax, listen, and learn. To create a simple legal description, imagine you are a surveyor standing in front of this property. Your job is to describe the boundary lines. Where are you going to start? Surveyors call the starting point a point of beginning, or POB. Next, how are you going to move around the lot? Do you want to move around the lot in a clockwise or counterclockwise direction? There is no rule regarding the direction a surveyor must take when moving around the lot. However,
there's no rule, but most of the time they will do it in a clockwise position. Okay?
Once the movement is decided, it must be used consistently in the subdivision. Let's move around this lot in a clockwise direction. Standing at the point of beginning, moving around the lot in a clockwise direction, are you facing north, south, east, or west? To keep this simple, let's say you're facing north. The next step would be to measure the distance from the point of beginning to the next monument. A monument is a natural or artificial marker that identifies the intersection of imaginary boundary lines. Examples of monuments are benchmarks, iron spikes, wooden stakes, and fences. The measurement from the point of beginning to monument 1 is 100 feet. So that legal description would read, starting at the point of beginning and moving due north for 100 feet. Monument 2 is due east for 150 feet. The next description is a bit more complicated, so please listen carefully. To measure angles, a surveyor will use a compass, which is divided into 4 equal quadrants, and then the specific degrees are measured. In our diagram, draw an imaginary straight line from the monument to the bottom boundary line. When this angle is measured, the description would read south 30 degrees east. The distance is 115.5 feet. The final measurement would close the legal description,
So,
meaning it would return.
do you get that? See, here was easy. We just went straight north, so many feet, right? And then this was easy because they went east so many feet. Because this line doesn't come straight south, then they have to use the degrees in the compass to give you the degrees. So everybody knows, and this ain't my area of expertise, so, and I'll wing and bullshit you through half of this you won't even know. But everybody knows what kind of angle is that. What? 90-degree angle. Why? Because if you had a compass, this would be 90 degrees, right? How many degrees would that be? What's half of 90? 45. So that's where the degrees come into play. Does that make sense, Jace? So if it's off, if it's not exactly dead north, they would say north so many degrees. And then they could even break that degrees down to minutes. And then they could even break the minutes down to seconds, because the clock, the compass is almost like a clock. Does that make sense? Okay. You're not going to have to do any of this, so don't stress. But you need to know. You need to know it.
Turn it to the point of beginning. This description would read, traveling due west for 207.7 feet to the point of beginning. Please note, this is a very simple example showing how a surveyor would move around the lot. A legal description is a formal description of real property, which could be given to a competent surveyor, and she or he could locate and identify the property using that legal description. The legal description should uniquely describe the subject property and determine the exact boundaries. That is, the location and dimensions of the property. The three types of legal description are meets and...
So we're going to stop this video right here. I may want to come back to it later. I stopped at 4:05 in the video. Somebody can remember that. I'm sure if I said I'm going to stop at 4:20, you would remember it.
It's 4:20.
Okay. So look at the meets and bounds survey that I handed, that somebody handed out for us. And it starts with this indenture on top. Okay. Now, if you go down where it says beginning, so first, before you even get to beginning, see where it says all certain parcel of land located in Rostraver Township, Westmoreland County, Pennsylvania, more particularly bound and described as follows. So, Jacob, are you on the right one?
Yeah.
Okay. So that gets you where, Jake? It gets you to the right state, the right county, and then down to the right township. So now anybody can pick, you can pick this paper up. If you lived in California and you were going to try to do this survey, and you drive to Pennsylvania, you drive to Westmoreland County, and then once you get to Westmoreland County, you go to Rostraver Township. Then beginning at a point in SR 201, that would be State Route 201, said point of beginning on the line of lands near NF, I'm not sure what that stands for, the Pittsburgh and West Virginia Valley Railroad Company. So that would be, if this was the survey right here, the railroad company property is located right here.
You're right. Go straight.
It don't rate.
I know, it was brand new out of the box. I grabbed it.
But the railroad company would be right here. Okay? It's not your fault. It's the
Maybe like let it.
Maybe, yeah, we could.
wet it.
Want a little cup?
Yeah, just like dip it in.
See if you can get it fixed for me, Andrea. Dip it, baby, dip it. Okay, so if you're looking at this legal description, starting on a point, beginning of a line of lands near the NF, I think NF, Pittsburgh and West Virginia Railroad Company, I think that's Norfolk, if I'm not mistaken, Pittsburgh and West Virginia Railroad Company. This along Route 201, let's say this was Route 201 right here in front of the house.
Probably not.
Route 201, along the lines of lands commonly known as lots 11, 12, and 29 in the St. Clair plan of lots. So this legal description is starting in this corner. Oh, that's better. Good job, squirrel. That's starting right here because this is my property, so I know where it's at. Here's the railroad company. Have you ever been to Vell's Car Wash? You ever been to Vell's Car Wash? You ever gone to the trestle? Well, that's the trestle, the railroad company they're talking about. And then that gray house right beside, right before you go underneath, is the property that we're describing. So they're starting right here. Over here is Clare Manor. You ever see those apartments over there, Clare Manor Apartments? So they're saying go, what? Go around, this is Route 201. They're saying go north 30 degrees, and then they see they even have it broke down, 7 minutes and 0 seconds on this survey. That's how technical you can get with this, so many feet to this point. And then from here, they're going to go all the way around and describe that property. So this is a legal meets and bounds survey that anybody can get a surveyor to look at this legal description. This legal description has been the same on this deed from the time William Penn conveyed this property to whoever bought it. Now, are legal descriptions sometimes changed on deeds? Yes, if there's a correction made. But unless there was a correction made because a surveyor found an error at one time, that legal description will stay the same all the time. And that's how you identify a piece of real estate in a sales agreement or in a deed or in a mortgage. Because now the GPS is only going to show, only takes you to the front door of the house, right? But a detailed legal description specifically explains where that property is all the way around, all the way around. So are we okay at this point? Because this stuff can be confusing, huh?
Yes.
Okay, but I'm going to make it simple for you, Ray. Okay? Then there's a picture, it's in your book of the surveys. Everybody see the picture in your book? And sometimes surveys, sometimes property's not completely square, is it? So in this one, boy, you have to come to that one corner, and then there's probably several different points, several different degrees. Sometimes if it's a round turn, they have to use a radius. But that's a meet and bound survey, what it looks like. And then we know what a monument is. What's a monument?
Stone.
A stone, a peg, a tree, and it's usually used to define a corner or a turn in a meets and bounds survey. Okay? But the problem is a lot of those monuments get changed, moved. I've had surveys, and the surveyor goes out and surveys it at night, and in the morning, the pins are moved. The neighbor didn't like the pins he moved because a pin, when they put a pin in, when they put it, do you ever see a survey, if somebody gets a survey, they have the stakes? That's a monument. That stake they put in the ground is a monument. Okay, you remember what a monument is. Then there's the lot and block system, okay? So we only use two kinds in Pennsylvania, lot and block and meets and bounds. So the lot and block system refers to a plat map, right? Plat map. And the map is filed where once the subdivision is approved? Courthouse. What courthouse? What county? Oh, Tammy, you're going to pass this test. Oh, my goodness, I'm getting excited. Okay. And then it spells out different parcel numbers. So let me look at another, which I passed you another one out that says lot and block. And I don't have a survey with that one, but it's the one with this like recorded thing up on top, and it says all certain piece of land situated in the township of Ross Draver on top. Okay? Now, this is, I showed you the first legal description was the deed of my property across from Bell's Car Wash, right? And it was a meets and bounds. And if you read that, it said so many feet from the railroad company. If you look at this one, okay, it only says, if you read the first paragraph, all a certain lot or piece of ground situated in the township of Ross Draver County, at Ross Draver, County of Westmoreland, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So they got you all the way to Westmoreland, Ross Draver Township, right? Beginning of lot number 4 as recorded, being lot number 24 in the Spring Grove plan of lots number 4 as recorded in the office of the Recorder of Deeds, Westmoreland County, Plan Book Volume 90, page 1231 and 1232. So what they're saying there, page 1231, 1221, 1232, if you went to the Recorder of Deeds office and you went to that book, they actually have books, big books. You will find a picture of this plat. You will find a picture of this plat. And on this plat, this isn't this particular plat, but you'll find a picture of the plat. There would be lot numbers, and you can look and you can find lot number 24. And then when you were looking at this plat, on the plat has the size of each lot written down there, and then they can get the exact legal description. So once they went and got a picture of this plat, the plat shows how many feet wide, north, it has the meets and bounds description on the plat. North 61 degrees, 35 feet, 150 feet. See that? Got it? I'm going fast. Bear look. Okay? So this is the plat, lot and block, referred to, let's say, lot 44, and here's the meets and bounds on each one. North 61 degrees, 33 minutes. This one even has 46 seconds. You know it's 120 feet to this point, and know. So a surveyor can go. See how they have the legal description on each lot? Girl. Morning. Good stuff, man. I get excited about this stuff. So, now look at the top of this handout I just handed you and see where it has that little barcode. And if you can see real good, you see there underneath the barcode, it says INSTR. That stands for instrument, and that's the number. So see that number right there? That's the number that if you went to the courthouse and you searched for instrument number, this deed would be in that book. This is newer because this is from a subdivided plan. If you look at the first deed I passed out to you, look up on top of it and see the first thing it says is DBV. Do you see that? That's deed book volume. And then there's the number. I don't know if it's 3703. And then it says the page 137. So, Lauren, there's two different kind of ways. So if I was going to have a sales agreement, you're not going to put the legal description in the sales agreement, right? What you're going to do is you're going to ask the seller can I have a copy of your deed? You're going to get the deed, and it's either going to have an instrument number on it, and you'll put that on, or it's going to have a deed book volume and page number on it. You're going to put that on, and that's the only property that's on that page or that instrument number when they pull it up in the courthouse. And it'll have all the information on the deed. Seller's name, buyer's name, legal description, maybe it meets and bounds, it may refer to a lot and block, and if it just refers to a lot and block, then you have to, the surveyor would have to go a step further and go pull the plat out of the courthouse to see what it is. Is that explained well enough that you can get it? Bless you. Okay. Then if you also look on this one with the barcode on top, bless you, the bottom of the first paragraph talks about a tax parcel ID number. See that tax parcel ID number 56-09-04-0-071? That's also a specific identifier, a tax ID number for that parcel. So if you have a tax ID number in your sales agreement or a deed book volume and page number, that person that's buying that property can give that information to any competent surveyor, and they can go out in the field and locate that property and then put monuments in around all the corners and put a little flag on it and say, here you go. Go ahead.
It's practical. I wouldn't rely on the tax parcel number, especially in Western, because they constantly, if you own two pieces of property, right, and they are side by side, the tax offices combine them.
Sometimes
And
they do,
You
but
might be trying to sell just the one, your deed, you have two deeds, and you're just trying to sell the one part.
well, and we're going to confuse the class, but I'm going to play with you. Can I play?
didn't mean to confuse you.
No, that's okay. I'm going to play with you. I don't go by the deed. I would rather go by the tax number. And the reason being, you can have one deed that can have 10 different parcels on it. You can have one deed that can have 10 parcels, but maybe I'm only selling this lot right here. So let's say every one of these tables are a piece of property. You could have one deed that can have each separate piece. They're all separate by themselves. Okay? This one is a mile down the road. You can have one deed that can have, John, have several different parcels on it, but the way you really hone down is the tax number, because I've been involved in this many, many times. I'm involved in it right now, where a seller owned two pieces of property. As a matter of fact, it was one piece, and he split it down the middle. And he said, I'm keeping this piece, and I'm selling this piece. And he had a subdivision recorded in the courthouse. Well, when we sold the property, they did the title search. They didn't pick up that there was a subdivision. And when we conveyed both pieces. Well, the seller, a year later, called me and said, hey, I ain't getting no tax bills. What the hell's going on? I don't know. I looked into it. You know why? We sold his property. He's pissed off. He's pissed off. Okay? See, the tax number is really, from my experience, and you got to remember, we sell a lot of property, 500 a year. This happens a lot. I had a situation on Knoll Hill where a lady owned, Curcio was her name, lovely lady. She owned two 1-acre lots. She said, Tommy, I only want to sell this one. The house is on. I want to keep this one. I said, no problem. We did the sales agreement. We only put the property address on it. We ended up selling both lots. It took 4 years to get this lot back to her, because this guy that bought it had a mortgage on it, and his bank wasn't going to carve this one off. So the tax map number is very, very important, because a deed could have several different parcels on it. But that doesn't mean that the seller's selling all of those. But when you can hone it down to a tax map number, then what John's saying is true, because now I'm going to validate what he said. Even tax map numbers could be screwed up. That's why you should have a form that we're the only real estate company that has this form, that when you buy a house off of us, the seller signs it, the buyer signs it at the closing table. When I make the closing attorney get them to sign it, stating that they have reviewed the deed and they know what they're conveying. And then it even has some questions on it. Doesn't it, Andrea? Do you own another piece of parcel close by? Because these mistakes are made more often than you would think.
Half the time people don't know. They don't know how many parcels.
No.
They don't know.
No, they don't. But in the one in Knoll, I screwed that one up. Okay? So for 4 years, I'm sweating my ass off, paying whatever legal fees there are to clean it up. Okay? On the one where we just sold, where the guy sold, had 2 pieces, and he wanted to keep this one, and he sold them both, he signed it for me and closed it. So when he called me bitching, I said, hey, Tom, I'm looking at your file. They had a form in there that said that you, the buyer, and the agent all signed it saying that you looked at the legal description.
So none of them looked at it.
So none of them looked at it. They signed the form. Andrea, do you hear me screaming about this all the time?
You're gonna end up splitting the fee with them.
All the time. No, I don't have to pay anything. My ass is covered. Now, don't get me wrong. They always think you got deep pockets, but in this situation, I'm kind of protected, and the bank is working with us, and the bank is taking this piece off and allowing us to give it back to the owner.
What would happen if they wouldn't do that? Would they not be able to get it back?
You probably get sued.
Yeah.
You know, you have to remember these banks, but these mortgages, they sell these mortgages. So when you go to PNC Bank to get a mortgage, PNC lends you money, and we're going to talk about this later in the class, and then they package 10 loans up and they sell it to some investor. Well, good luck, track. I'm telling you, you're never able to do it. We were fortunate with this one here that the bank that did the mortgage kept the mortgage. They have the mortgage in-house, and they're working with us because they're a local bank. But legal descriptions are important. You can't just put a property address on a sales agreement and say, I'm selling 123 Happy Hollow Road. Or you could run into some major problems. And Andrea will tell you, she hears me preaching this constantly to my agents, constantly preaching it, that, hey, make sure you put the deed book volume and page number, make sure you put the tax map number on it, make sure, and I have a special form I make my buyer sign too. Guess what it says? We recommend that you get a survey. Most people don't. Anybody here buy a house in the last 5 years, put your hand up. Did you get a survey? No. Why? I'll tell you why. It was money. You're buying a house as expensive as it is, ain't it? You know, you look at the house and say, wow, it looks like there are fences here, fences there, fences in the back, sidewalk here. This must be what I'm getting. Not all the time. But most people don't get a survey because, you know, a survey on a residential lot right now is about $1,000. So they say, I don't need it. But I got a lot of good horror stories, Samantha, that tell you why you do need it. And that's why we're the only office. I'm telling you, we're the only office got these forms. And people bitch constantly. Other real estate agents won't even let their people say, don't sign this. Most other attorneys won't even let them. But we push them, and I tell my agents, if they won't sign, write on the form they refuse to sign, but I went over the form with them. Because I just want people to know what they're getting, man. Listen, I don't want problems. You know, but when you buy a property, last thing you need to know is find out you're not getting what you thought you were getting. Okay? So lots and block. What 2 forms in Pennsylvania are there of legal descriptions? What kind? Lots and block and meets and bounds. Okay? And there's an example of in your book of a lot and block. Do you see? Is that in your book? This one here that's up on the screen? Okay. Now look at that survey. See, it just has the lot number on it, right? Lot number 1, 2, 3, 4. 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, that's the actual subdivision plat that's recorded in the courthouse. And the plat then, you know, so if you were going to put in the sales agreement, you'd put lot number 1 in the Fertile Acres amended subdivision. And then the surveyor would go and he'd pull this up and he'd say, oh, okay, there's my legal description to do the survey. Rectangular survey system. It's the third one. It's called the government survey system. It's not used in Pennsylvania. Okay? It's not used in Pennsylvania. It's based on 2 sets of intersecting lines. I bet you guys use these lines every day and don't even know it. One is the principal meridian. It runs north and south. One is a baseline that runs east and west. And they use degrees of longitude and latitude. Where do you think you use this on a regular basis? Where? Who used GPS to find this location? Seneca, you did. How do you think your phone knew where Cedar Brook Golf Course was? No. No. You know how it knew it? Because somewhere it's recorded on a big map somewhere up in a cloud that Cedar Creek Golf Course is located not at the address, at a certain longitude and latitude. And that's how GPS works. That's how GPS works. GPS knows the longitude and latitude of the address that you're trying to get to. And that's how the computer knows where it's at. And then the computer knows the longitude and latitude of where you're at right now. And then when you say, take me from here to there, it calculates how to get from this point in the longitude and latitude to that point. Now, if anybody here been on a plane in the last couple of years, last 5 years, sometimes you'll hear them on a plane saying, we're 45,000 feet above, right? And you know, it's all longitude and latitude. You know, and that's why when I first got in the real estate business, we didn't have GPS. We had a map. Really, had a map. I had a Pittsburgh map book carried in my car. Because I sold houses all over. Pittsburgh, Hempfield, New Kensington. And when somebody called me and said they wanted to see a house, and I handled a lot of foreclosures when I first got in the business, they'd give me the address. I'd look up the Pittsburgh map book, see where it was at. I'd look at the map and figure out where I'm at now, and then figure out how I'm going to get from where I'm at now to where I need to go. And now GPS does all that for you. You just put, and if you use Waze, it'll even tell you if there's any cops along the way. Okay, so don't get stressed out over this rectangular system. I'm telling you right now, don't get stressed out. We don't use it in Pennsylvania, but you may see it on the test. Okay, you may see it on the test. So basically, it's based on 2 intersecting lines. The principal meridian runs what? North and south. How are we going to remember that? Baseline, east and west. Well, I don't know.
Is there a reason we don't use this one in PA?
Yeah, because when Lewis and Clark was doing the survey for Pennsylvania, what year did they do that, Andrea? 18 something? They didn't have GPS.
Wait, we don't do what?
We don't use the rectangular government system in
Why the hell are we even looking at that?
because you're taking 2 parts of this test. You're taking, tell them, Vaughn, a national that covers the whole country and a state specific. So the national portion covers this. So back when Lewis and Clark were doing that, they got out to about the Mississippi River. I think that's how far they did it. And by that time, their asses were dragging, man. Can you imagine walking? How many colonies were there? 13 colonies with a chain and one of those little things, what do you call it? Transit. You seen those guys in that picture, they look worn, man. They got out to the Mississippi River, they said, hell with this shit, I ain't going all the way to California. And somebody came up with, let's do a better, easier way. Plus, when you get on the other side of the Mississippi River, aren't things more level? Okay, so I may be bullshitting you, but that's my explanation of why they don't do it. Okay?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. So getting back to this, what we're looking for, principal, meridian, and baseline. So how are you guys going to remember that? Okay, so if we all know, and Lexi, this is working so good. I am so glad you gave me that idea. North, south, east, west, right? So the baseline runs east and west, right? Wouldn't you consider this to be a baseline?
Yeah.
Look at that again, because you're going to burn that into your minds, Christine. The baseline's going to be here, because it's like a base, right? And then the principal meridian is going to be north and south. Maybe that will help you. Helps me. If you ask me tomorrow, does baseline run north or south, east or west? I'm going to say, oh, it runs east and west. See, that's a little bit too much. I'm not that smart. Okay. And then it uses degrees of longitude and latitude. Then it further, I told you, don't get stressed out about this. Then it further divides it into townships and sections. Okay. Now, townships and sections, we're not talking Ross Draver Township and Elizabeth Township. We're using township as a metric. Each section is 1 mile square, containing 640 acres. Each township is 6 miles square, containing 36 square miles. Okay? So you got the baseline thing down. What's baseline run, Samantha? East or west, north or south? Okay. What runs north and south? Oh, I know how we can remember that. When I was in school, one time my teacher came to me and said, get up to the principal's office. Up would be north, right? North, principal. Going north to the principal's office. Get up to the principal's office. Wait, Ellen, you're going to remember? You'll remember that. Hope.
I'll remember it now.
You'll remember it now. Okay.
Just again on Tuesday.
Get up to the principal's office. So the principal meridian is going to be up, would be north, if you were looking at north, south, east, or west, the baseline. Hey, I've been teaching this class for 20 years. I just came up with that just now. I just made that up. You never heard that before, did you, Vaughn? Did you ever hear that? Oh, you weren't in my class. That's cool. Okay. And this is what it kind of looks like. There may be a map like this in your book. Is there? Keep looking. I'm sure there is one. Nothing that shows a rectangular survey system? I just figured out why I'm so hot up here. This goddamn thing's got a fan right here blowing right on me, Andrea. We need something up here to block us like this. Huh?
Move the speaker back. Move the speaker in front of it.
Is it hot air?
Yeah. Oh, you and Lexi are just full of good ideas today.
We're on it.
Okay. So I can't believe this is not in your book. Ray, look in the book and see if I know you can find it. We're looking for this, what the hell do you call it? What kind of survey is this? What is it? Rectangular, or what else do they call it? Government? There's not a picture of that in the book? They must not think it's that important. What unit are we on? 4? Not that I don't trust you guys.
It talks about the rectangular survey.
What page?
Page 60.
It talks about it, but don't show a picture of it. Okay, but that's what it looks like. So, sorry that you guys don't have it in your book. Lexi has it in her book, but don't you? In the 13th edition.
No.
You sure? Okay.
You wanna look?
No. So, this is an example of the way it would look. And I'm not real good at explaining this, but I bet you I have a video on it. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, we're going to go back to preparing a survey. We're going to go back to this video because I didn't play the whole video.
This is the world's first reusable cotton swab.
Somebody gives me
It
12
removes
bucks.
up to
I'll
5
pay
times
for a
more
month of this so
excessive
you won't have to
noise.
listen to these videos.
Recent studies
It's
show
harmful.
that standard cotton swabs are harmful to your ears.
And fences. The measurement from the point of beginning to Monument 1 is 100 feet. So that legal description would read, starting at the point of beginning and moving due north for 100 feet. Monument types of legal description are meets and bounds, lot and block, and rectangular survey.
That may be on a test.
Let's review each of them.
So at least know all 3, okay? Ellen, quit laughing at me, please.
Land in the original
What's that?
I have the legal description for my property and my house from 140 years ago.
It never changes, did it?
Well, it's kind of funny, 140 years ago, they used other people's property as your monument, so to speak.
Well, they used them here. Remember that one talked about the corner of the railroad. They do. Yeah, they used other people's corners there. Yeah.
They just say now or formerly of
Yeah.
James Smith. It's very easy
Yeah,
to figure out who it is.
the other property owners.
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
supposed to. That's
Go
an
ahead.
example. The legal description does change when the attorney's doing it. If they're being really good, okay, that now or formerly covers our ass type of thing. So you put now or formerly of Joe Blow. Well, most of the attorneys just copy it. But if you really want to be good about it, you should check. And if it's changed and now it went from Joe Blow to Martha Smith, it should now say
Right.
now or
But-
formerly of Martha Smith.
Right. So it could change there.
But it's not changing the description. The meets and bounds aren't changing. The identifiers are changing.
I always love having somebody that passed the bar exam in my class.
I'll shut up.
Them and engineers, they're the worst. You know why? They catch me on everything. They catch me on everything because they're smarter than me. Okay, let's go with this. I had an engineer in my first class, Jason. I still remember him. Jesus, criminy out loud. Lexi called me on something the other day about, I can't remember. Oh, it was that video, Pete, P-E-T-E. What's Pete stand for? What's P stand for?
Oh, God.
Somebody help her out with the P. Police power. E.
Eminent domain.
What's T stand for?
I'm blank.
got it
On Tuesday.
What's T stand for? Help her. Taxes or Tom, whichever you prefer. And then what's the other E stand for? SG. Okay. We're going to get you through this, Lex. Don't worry about it. If not, we're going to start another class soon.
13 colonies plus Maine, Vermont, Tennessee, Kentucky, Texas, West Virginia, and parts of Ohio were surveyed with the meets and bounds surveying system. The other states used the rectangular survey, which we will review in a few minutes.
Today, we have sophisticated survey equipment to determine measurements and angles, and the angles can be measured in degrees, minutes, and seconds. In the pioneer days, a legal description could read, starting at the forks of the road and meandering north along the creek bed, were
Mandarin
13 chains to the tall oak tree. Follow the fence line east for 20 chains to the big boulder, then south for 13 chains to the walnut tree, then west along the road for approximately 20 chains to the point of beginning, and it contains 26 acres more or less. For your information, a chain is 66 feet.
There you go.
Meets means to measure
66 feet for a chain. Are you going to need to know that? Probably not. But would never hurt. Maybe one of these will be on Jeopardy. I hate Jeopardy. I hate it. All those people were so much smarter than me.
distance, while bounds indicate direction. A meets and bounds is also known as a boundary survey. The meets and bounds survey is characterized by degrees, or if the surveyor is really specific, the description can include degrees, minutes, and seconds. A legal description reading south 45 degrees east for 150 feet would be a meets and bounds survey.
In 1785, the federal government began using the rectangular survey system to identify government land. Their goal was to create a system that would measure the land in a uniform fashion. The rectangular, or government survey, is based on two sets of intersecting lines known as principal meridian lines, which run north and south, and base lines, which run east and west. Principal meridian and base lines are based on longitude and latitude.
GPS.
Longitude and latitude are coordination points which describe any location on the Earth. If a captain of the ship or a pilot want to specify their position, these are the coordinates they would use.
That's what the airplane
This
pilot says, right?
concludes this section.
We're 45 degrees north, 150 degrees east, 45,000 feet above sea level. Didn't you ever hear him say that over again? GPS, anywhere on Earth.
Please close this page to continue with the review of the government survey.
Apparently I don't have a good enough one with that. I may have something else with it, but my dude truck rage don't have it. Let's see if I have anything in my presentation as we go on. If not, I'll find something for you. You're getting it, bud, huh? This is like really foreign stuff. Like asbestos. Every one of you heard of asbestos, right? Every one of you heard of lead-based paint or something. But this kind of stuff is a little bit more tricky. So preparing a survey, breathe easy. Only a licensed surveyor or a title attorney can create or alter a legal description. Remember, John was saying some of the attorneys will alter it if the name's changed. 2 documents, survey and survey sketch. I don't know what they mean by that, but a spot survey shows the size, shape, and location of buildings. Okay, so spot survey. We handed one out to you guys. Got the pictures of the house on it. Okay, now this spot survey. Who owns the property to the right of that? Who owns the property to the right of this subject property on this spot survey? Who? No. The spot survey. The railroad. They have to stop mixed up somewhere.
Wait, which one is the spot?
Well, I don't know where that is. Oh, that's the crow.
Which one
The
is
spot survey is the one that says on the right side, Pittsburgh and West Virginia Railroad Company. Does everybody have the right one? Okay, so if you really wanted to get crazy, take the legal description that I handed out before that had the railroad company on it, pull that out. That deed, that legal description came from this survey. So, Ellen, if you ain't got nothing better to do tonight, you can read this legal description and you can follow right along with this survey and it'll take you all the way around. This is what we call a spot survey, and the reason it's a spot survey, it's showing the improvements on it. A regular survey would just show the land. A spot survey shows the built improvements on it. So this is showing a vinyl sided building, showing a 2-car garage, and then a shed in the backyard. It's a spot survey. And this was done by Madison Engineering in 1999. Okay? When I bought that property, I had a survey. Okay? And that was the deed that I showed you guys. So, and you can see the monuments are the little round circles on there. So that's a spot survey. Inquiring minds want to know. She got one in the book, she said. She's okay. Is it quitting time yet? Huh? So spot survey shows the shape, the size, and the location of the buildings. Now, why would you want, Garrett, you're kind of far back here. I'm going to play rotation one of these days. Would you guys be offended if after you sit down and get comfortable, I make you move?
No, I want to sit in the back.
You wouldn't mind in a minute if I traded your table with Jason and Garrett's table back here. Huh? I just feel you guys are too far from me over there. Jacob, I can't even see your name badge.
She didn't answer you.
Jason, I won't do that to you because nobody likes change. But what's a spot survey show, Ellen?
The land and the improvements.
Well, a spot survey shows the size, shape, and the location of the buildings. Okay, on the map. The size, the shape, and the location. So why would that be important if you were buying a house to have a spot survey done? Because Ellen, you didn't even have a survey done. You don't even know if your house is on your land, do you? Nope. And you're laughing. You'd be surprised how many people call me up and say, my neighbor just put a fence right up against my house. It happens a lot. Okay? It happens a lot. So spot survey shows the location, size, and improvements of the land. Surveys are not required to transfer properties in Pennsylvania, okay? But they're always required if you're doing a subdivision, okay? If you were doing a subdivision, they would always be required. So the bank don't require a survey. Nobody requires a survey except for Tom Simon, who makes you sign a paper saying you should have one.
So on here, the survey and the deed are two different numbers from the spots in the survey. So does that mean that on the deed it was listed as a certain amount of feet, but on the survey they found it was more?
Show me what you're talking about.
Here. That says, what is that, 82.93, and then that says.
Yes, there's a they're pointing out, good job.
It's all the way around, look.
Yeah, good job. They're pointing out when that surveyor did that survey, something ain't right. So to cover his ass, if you look on there what he's saying the deed says this, but my survey says this.
So which do you go off of then, the survey?
Which do I go off of? I'm the owner of the property. I pay for the survey. I don't care which one it is. Now, if my neighbor was in a dispute with me, and we needed a note to the minute, then it comes into a legal matter. And I was just down at Sweet Spot yesterday getting lunch, and the guy called me and said, "Oh, this is a true story. I was at Sweet Spot. This old Italian guy, he bugs me all the time about real estate. And I don't mind, because one of these days he's going to use me for something. But right now he's just using me for free information. He says, I got my property surveyed, the stake is here. My neighbor got it surveyed, the stake is here, and I think it's over here. What should I do? I said, go see an attorney. You don't think you could have two different surveys? You could have two different surveyors come up with two different surveys. That's what judges are for. If there's a problem with it. In that case, that's in the back of my property. I don't really care if I own to what the deed says or to what the survey says. It really doesn't bother me. Now, we have a big hill in our backyard. And Lexi has a dog. It's called Willie Dog. My wife thinks it's her dog. So my wife likes to walk up the hill with Willie Dog and play, especially when it's a little bit wet because it's a little muddier down by my yard. Up on the hill, it's a little drier. So we were up there the other day. I walk up with her occasionally, not all the time because it's a big walk. And she says, Tom, what are these stakes? And I said, well, those are monuments, honey. And she says, well, how come both of them say property corner on it and they're this far apart? And I said, well, because that's what our surveyor did, and this one, the neighbor Carl's surveyor just did. And she said, well, which one's right? I said, it depends on who you talk to. As far as I'm concerned, that's ours. As far as Carl's concerned, that's his. Now, if you want to dispute it, you take both surveyors, you go in front of a judge and dispute it to move it. And let a judge make a call. I don't know. It's not exact, is it? Nothing in life is. Nothing in life is. Okay, let's keep going. Lenders may require a survey, but they very rarely do. But look at the last one I turned out, that I passed out. These are all real life true surveys. The one that Jacob said Craig Baker owns on the right hand side.
David Russell.
David Russell estate. Probably should have whited that out, but I didn't. None of you know David Russell, do you? Here's a survey we got on a piece of property, and when we surveyed the property, the surveyor come back and said, "Ooh, ooh, part of the deck is encroaching on the neighbor's property." Does everybody see that? Ellen, this is why you should have got a spot survey. You didn't buy your house from my company, did you?
Well,
I think you're gonna go home and call a surveyor tomorrow, huh? You're probably thinking about it, aren't you? You're a little nervous about that.
What about the driveway?
Driveway's off of it too.
Yeah.
Holy shit, this guy could be this isn't your property, is it, Ellen?
You could technically not allow him to drive up his own
Absolutely.
driveway.
That's why you gotta recommend you get a survey, but if you don't want to, that's fine.
Didn't that
As
happen
long as you
on
sign
that-
my form that says I recommended you have one. Okay.
There was a house on like Turkey Hollow around here,
Mhm.
and this happened.
Well, this is around here.
The neighbor owned their driveway and would no longer.
Allow them to use it.
Yeah. And then whenever they were selling the house, he wouldn't let anybody. You had to basically go by helicopter.
Yeah,
To
yeah.
go see this house because it had.
We had that happen in Shawnee Point, where the neighbor owned the driveway,
That's crazy.
and he blocked it off.
That's a neighbor I don't want.
Now, you can go to court, you can fight that, but this is why you should have a cert. Not everybody does. 95%, 99% don't. But they don't teach this class. So, if you want to be a good real estate agent, Ellen, what you need to at least do is say, we recommend, here's a form.
Yeah.
When you make the
I'll go
offer,
at your house.
here's a form, and that's when we use this form. That we recommend that you should have a home inspection. Did you have a home inspection? Okay. And not only should you have a home inspection, but you should have a survey. Now, if you don't, you're a big girl, that's fine, but would you sign this form here saying I recommend it? Because buyers have selective memory. A lot of times they say, the agent never told me to get a survey. Then I have to go in my archives and pull that form out and say, well, you signed it right here. So this is why you should have a survey. Now, this poor guy here, part of the house is sticking on a neighbor's property, and part of the driveway's on a neighbor's property. Probably been like that from day one. probably will be like that till the end anyway. But, you know, if that guy runs off with the neighbor's wife, the neighbor may get pissed off and block the driveway off.
Screw you guys.
You know, right? So you'll remember a spot survey. You'll pass a spot survey on the test. You're a little nervous you didn't have a survey now, aren't you? You are, aren't you?
I was thinking, 140-year-old property, it's probably hasn't changed in 140 years.
Probably hasn't. And that's what most people say. And 99.9% of the time, there's not a problem. And if the house, I had a house in West Newton, same situation as this. I bought it, didn't have a survey. I'm in a business. And when I went to sell it, the garage was sticking over on a neighbor's property about a foot, just like this. And the neighbor, who I really didn't get along with, but he didn't hate me, I never told him. But you know who I did tell? The buyer. I said, I've had the property surveyed after I bought it, and that corner of the garage is sticking over on a neighbor's property. Are you okay with it? The buyer says, I'm okay with it.
Just don't tell your neighbor. Don't tell your neighbor.
And I sold the property. I just disclosed. You know what I'm saying? And even the title insurance company that did the title, they were okay with it, but they put an exception in the title insurance policy, and we'll get into all that title insurance later, saying we're going to cover it as the property's free and clear from any liens or encumbrances, except for the garage sticking over on the neighbor's property. Okay? So most people don't lose any sleep, don't get stressed out over it, and you're probably 100% okay. I don't think you need to run out now and spend money to buy a survey, because last thing you want to do now is put a monument out in the front yard showing that your driveway is halfway on the neighbor's property. Then you're just all kinds of. Then I don't know if you're married, your husband may get pissed off too. Just leave it go. Leave it go. But you'll advise your clients and say, hey, get a survey. You know, most of them are going to say, man, I'm using all the cash I got for a down payment, closing costs. I don't have an extra $1,000. That's what most people say. You know, I got where we live right now. We got the property surveyed before we moved in, and my neighbor come running out once they put the monuments up. We don't call them monuments, we call them stakes. We put the stakes up and says, hey, you had your property surveyed. My fence is on your property, 3 feet. Tuckers.
I don't think you're supposed to be saying people's names.
What's that?
Those are people's names.
Yeah,
well,
YouTube.
But it's true. And I said, well, listen, my wife wants to put a pool in the backyard. How about if you let us drive through your yard so that we can bring all the heavy equipment in and put the pool in, and I'll give you an easement of 3 feet where your fence, you can maintain the fence and nobody can ever tell you to turn it down. And they did. They let us use their front yard to bring all that equipment in. And then we put everything back when we were done, cleaned it up, and then we gave them an easement in writing that's recorded in the courthouse saying, whoever I sell that property to can't do a damn thing about that. And you can do an easement or something like that. So there's ways of fixing it. There's ways of fixing it. God rest his soul. He's a good guy. Okay. I only got 3 more slides to go. So I was going to say let's take a break, but let's finish this section. We only got 1 unit done so far today. Are you nervous about that, Samantha?
Well, I looked at unit 5.
She's okay with it. Sorry, it's not long enough.
We're okay with this.
I didn't want to start it either. I had 64 slides for that sucker. I was hoping to get it done today, but I think the review we did this morning. Oh, let me repeat that one more time. I think the review we did this morning, was it very helpful, Seneca? Very helpful. So the review this morning was very helpful, huh?
I took a test on chapter 1 last night.
Would
I
you?
only missed 4 questions.
Oh, good for you. I've had a lot of excuses for people being late. Lex's was, sorry I was late. Sebastian kept me up last night.
My cat kept waking me up. He wanted to play. I couldn't
Her
sleep.
cat kept waking her up. That's one. Sebastian's not her boyfriend. It's her cat.
I counted to 100 a million times in my head. I could not sleep last night.
Don't worry about it, baby. We'll get you caught
I
up.
thought you were getting
Nope, that was yesterday.
Andrea, can you give Lex the first 3 study guides? I think I threw them. Why don't you give her 2? And then we emailed you all the study guides. And she's going to give you the first 3. The rest of them you're on your own. But they'll be, you read those. Seneca said they was worth, she was almost going to bring me a Dunkin' Donut latte.
I was this close.
I like lattes. Regular latte, yeah.
Is Starbucks still closed?
Why
No.
would they be good?
Okay. So now we talked about, and before I quit this chapter, I'm going to go on YouTube somewhere and find something about that rectangular survey system that'll help you a little better, okay? Help explain, because I'm not the best at that. Now we talked about measuring this way, right? Everything we talked about was measuring length and width, but we didn't talk about measuring up, did we? Elevations. Why would you need to measure elevations? Condos. You've taken this class before, haven't you? You need to be able to at least know that you can measure up.
No, you told us that on the first day when talking about airspace, not land.
Oh, did I? Okay, good. Oh, good.
Or I might have remembered.
Or you may have remembered a few things. So let's talk a little bit about, so you have a little bit of idea about measuring elevations. Subdivision in the air is called air lots. Okay? So when you subdivide the air, because remember we said when you own land, you own down to what? And up to what? Infinity. Well, you can sell the mineral rights down below, right? Can you sell land underneath the surface to somebody else just a block of land? Who said that? Why can't you?
I guess you could sell it.
Sure you could. Yeah. If you live next door to me and you said, hey, Tom, I want to build a bunker and I got all rock on my side, I'll buy a piece of land underneath your property and ton of lumber for mine and make a bunker, you can do that. Because not only can you measure up, but you can measure down. Nobody ever talks about that because it's not very rarely done. But you could. But you could measure, you could sell up. So if this is your land right here, and here's your little tree, and here's your house, okay, and you wanted to sell this air lot right here, you could do that. You could do that, okay? You could do that. But now we have to figure out how we measure that air lot to convey it to somebody. And this isn't the best example, but it's an example to make you say, well, who the hell would ever want to do that? Well, I'll tell you who would want to do
Yeah,
that.
who's buying just a.
What if you're like broke and just like sell something?
Well, here, let me move this over so you can see it a little better, squirrel. Okay, but if you own this piece of land right here, okay, and you built a condominium, which was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stories high, and each story was 1 unit, and you wanted to sell this unit, we have to be able to legally describe this unit and where it's at, right? So we're going to use some types of meets and bounds or rectangular or lot and block to describe where it sits on the land. Now we have to figure out how we're going to describe up here. Okay?
Say 5 stories up.
What's that?
Can you just say the 5th floor?
You could. Can't you just say if you're selling a piece of property, I'm selling 123 Happy Hollow Road? Yes. But remember what we said about a legal description. It has to be something that any competent surveyor could locate that spot. or any court would agree that that's a sufficient legal description. So could you say apartment 1 on the 5th floor? Yeah, but that's not a good enough legal description. So you subdivide air creates air lots. So specific boundaries over a parcel of land. Condominiums. A condominium plat must show the elevations of all the floors. So it must show the elevation of each floor. Okay? It must define vertical and horizontal dimensions of the floor and unit. Subsurface rights face similar issues, but nobody talks about it except Tammy Haywood. Okay? So how do we do that? Well, one is we use datum. Datum is a point line or surface from which elevations are measured or indicated. They're all ran off of the USGS, United States Geological Survey, means sea level at New York Harbor. So that's what they use. They use sea level at New York Harbor, but since the earth is round, do you think that elevation is different in Los Angeles? Yes, so in most big cities will have their own elevation, okay? Chicago uses the low water level at Lake Michigan. They established the height of structures for grades and streets. Did you ever figure out, Jason, like I'm in awe when I drive down the road and I see them building a new road. How in the hell high do they know to put the road? Like, you been to Greensburg lately?
Yeah.
They're working on 70, right? The old part of 70 is down here. The new part of 70 is up here. I was just coming down it the other day, and I said, how the hell do they know just exactly how high to make the road? And not only how high to make it here, but how high to make it there, and how high to make it there. Well, they use this system. Not only, Sheila, to specify air lots, but to put roads in, to put utilities in, utility lines. They could use them if they needed to, or whatever. So large cities establish a local data. So anybody ever been down to the Point in Pittsburgh?
Mhm.
Okay. Next time you go to the Point, you're going to think of Tom Simon. See how I plant that seed? Because you know what you're going to do? You're going to be with somebody maybe, and you're going to say, come on, honey, I want to go all the way to the Point, to the tippy top of the Point, to the point of the Point. And you know what's right at the point of the Point? A datum, a benchmark. And it's a plaque. And it says exactly what the elevation from sea level in the New York Harbor is to on top of that thing. Because I know. Because me and my wife were riding our bikes one time, and I'm not a big bike rider, she's not neither, but we took a ride from Southside Cheesecake Factory, we're big fans of Cheesecake Factory. We went from the Cheesecake Factory along the bike trail, crossed the river down to the Point, and I said, look, Nate, there's a benchmark right there. And it says specifically what the elevation is to that point. So if somebody's building a skyscraper in Pittsburgh, they can go down to the Point, to that benchmark, and it'll tell the elevation of that, and they can determine an air lot 40 stories up on a building because they have that starting point right there. Now, benchmarks are permanent reference points locating local benchmarks simplify surveying while used for some degree for surface measurements for lots. Their principal references for marking datum, and datum is the elevation. So, West Newton Bridge. I'm going down, walking along West Newton Bridge one day, and what the hell do I run across? A benchmark showing data. And that's what it is right there. That's all it is. Usually a round piece of metal. And this is embedded in the West Newton Bridge on the West Newton side, upriver side. And it says, has some markings on it. I don't know, 1935. I don't know. I'm a real estate guy. What the hell do I know about that damn thing? Not too much. But let me see if I can get a surveyor on the phone. See if the guy answers the phone. We need this set up so I can Bluetooth it everywhere. Well, maybe that's not a good idea. Chuck, what's up? Hey. Yeah. Hey, listen, I'll see you tomorrow. But in the meantime, I got you on speakerphone and in front of a class of a bunch of real estate agents that want to get their real estate license. Yeah. I know. So I probably should be talking to Scott about this, but I always like calling you first. On West Newton Bridge, is there a benchmark there for elevations? And what is the elevation of that specific benchmark?
NABD 88 770.74.
And what's that mean?
That's the elevation. 770 feet, 770.74 feet.
Above, would they use the New York Harbor for that?
No, I don't know what they use.
Okay. I hear Scott chiming in the background.
It has a reference number of 1357.
Okay, so if okay, so if somebody wanted to put a condo in West Newton and you had to survey and locate the 8th floor of that condo, you would use that benchmark to do the elevation. Okay. Okay, great. Okay, Chuck. I knew you did. So how many feet is that above sea level? 700?
770.74.
Okay.
So that'd be 779 inches.
Okay. You're probably impressed that I even know there's a benchmark there, don't you? Aren't you?
I'm impressed that you got a glasses listening to you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Chuck. I'll pay you back tomorrow. I want lunch tomorrow when I come down.
Wait a minute, I'll get you a job. I should be getting money.
That's true. I forgot about that. Okay, brother. I'll catch you later. Okay, bye-bye. Okay. Okay, while I'm talking to Chuck on the phone, this is real life real estate. I got a text message. Okay? Remember the guy we were just talking about? That we had 2 pieces of property and he wanted to keep this one and sell this one. We've been working on it for several months. It must have got resolved. I haven't looked at my email. Thanks for all your help. Roseanne and I sincerely appreciate it. That's going to tell me that there's an email that the problem finally got solved. And I've been working on it. This was an easy one for several months. So see why I said I couldn't time that any. Could I time that any better? Huh? Couldn't time that any better. If I showed you all the emails that we had involved in that. So that's what Datum's used for. See, Chuck's a surveyor. He knew exactly how many feet above sea level that mark was. And if they were going to build a condo down there in West Newton or even Ross Raver, they could go all the way from West Newton Bridge and bring that elevation to right where we're standing. You know how Lewis and Clark did it with the chains? Well, they'll do it differently. Now they have GPS and all that probably does it a little bit better. So that was some good stuff, man. I get excited about that kind of stuff. He always answers my calls too. So before I let you break, let me see if I could find, maybe Andrea can help me. Andrea, how can I just jump on YouTube here real quick? And search for prep agent. What are we looking for? What kind of, what do they call that survey out there? Geographical, or what the hell was the name of it? What is it? Is that the rectangular
Government,
Yeah.
yeah.
or government survey?
There, look, it just popped up.
Rectangular survey. So here's my guy. Government survey system. You gotta love this guy.
Hats.
It's the hat, huh?
At Sonobello, Pittsburgh, we remove your stubborn body fat permanently in just one visit.
$15. I'll get rid of
I'm
these ads
Dr.
for the whole course.
Pass your real estate exam with PrepAgent.com. Remember, keep it concise and keep it simple. When you tell somebody where a property is, you typically give them an address. But what if there is no address? What if there are no streets? The government survey system is a federal land survey system that's been applied to most of the land added to the United States since the system was adopted in 1785. A little while ago. There was no Google Maps back then. Here's how it works. It starts by identifying reference lines, an east-west line called the baseline and a north-south line called the principal meridian. Lines are then drawn about every 6 miles parallel to the meridian and the baseline. The east-west lines are referred to as township lines, and the north-south lines are range lines.
Okay, you may want to
By
know
nature
that.
of the lines being drawn 6 miles on each side,
Okay. So, I don't know. You may need this on a test, you may not. But
outlines are range lines. By nature of the lines being drawn 6 miles on each side, you now have 36 square miles, which makes up the townships. So a township is identified by specifying how many townships it is north or south of the baseline and how many range it is east or west of that principal meridian. For example, a legal description might describe a township as Township 4 North, Range 5 West. But even if you identify that little area, 36 square miles is still a pretty large area. Thus, next comes the sections. A township is divided into 36 sections. Remember, a township is 36 square miles. There are 36 sections, so that means each section is 1 square mile. Each square mile section is numbered consecutively. However, you got to realize it is numbered starting with section 1 in the northeast corner of the township, and then it goes back and forth, kind of swerving like a snake, ending with section 36 at the southeast corner of the township. So the legal description can identify the relevant square mile section simply by the section's number within the identified township. So for example, now we can narrow it down by looking at section 9 here in this township. Now we will use fractional descriptions. For example, we will say the northwest quarter of section 9, the southwest half of the northwest corner of section 9, and you'll keep on going until you identify that exact spot of land. Putting these elements of description together, a simple legal description using the government survey system might go like this. The south half of the northwest quarter of section 6, township 12, range 71, west of the principal meridian. You notice when we read the description, we started with the more specific information and worked up to the more general, which is really not that much different from the mail you get. It starts with your name, then the address, and then goes city, and then state.
that makes
It ends
sense
with the
of
more
it there.
general element.
Okay, don't worry
More
about
great
it.
information to get past your real
Okay.
estate exam. Remember,
You
go to
may need it for the state
PrepAgent.com.
test, but I'm gonna say, don't worry about it and stress yourself out and spend a whole bunch of time trying to figure out how to do that. But read it over. I would know the baseline runs which way? Principal's office, north and south. And then I would know that each township is how many square miles? 36, right? And then each, what was in the township is a square mile. Section is 1 square mile, correct? So I would at least know that. So let's take a little bit of a break. Boy, we only got to unit 4 today, but we're still going to do some more work. And you can go ahead and cut it, Andrea, the taping. We're done with this section. Take 5 minutes and we'll go from there. I'll figure out what we're gonna do.
Well, I need to ask you stuff.
What's that?